In the scorching heat of an Iraqi summer in 1922, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley carefully brushed away millennia of accumulated sand and debris from what appeared to be merely another unremarkable mound in the ancient landscape of southern Mesopotamia, unaware that his methodical excavation techniques would soon reveal one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the modern era, as his team's systematic removal of successive layers of earth gradually exposed the remnants of the Royal Cemetery of Ur, a burial ground that would fundamentally transform our understanding of early human civilization and reveal the extraordinary sophistication of the world's first known kings. The painstaking process of uncovering these ancient tombs, conducted with the primitive archaeological methods available in the early 20th century yet guided by Woolley's meticulous attention to stratigraphic detail, gradually revealed a series of elaborate burial chambers containing not only the remains of Sumerian royalty adorned with magnificent golden headdresses, intricate jewelry, and ceremonial weapons of unprecedented craftsmanship, but also the skeletal remains of dozens of court attendants, musicians, and guards who had apparently accompanied their rulers into death, in a display of loyalty and religious devotion that spoke to the absolute power wielded by these ancient monarchs. As Woolley's team carefully documented and photographed each artifact in situ, mapping the precise location of every golden cup, silver spear, and lapis lazuli ornament before their removal to museums around the world, they began to piece together a picture of a society so sophisticated and hierarchically organized that it challenged prevailing assumptions about the capabilities of early human civilizations, revealing evidence of complex metallurgical techniques, advanced mathematical knowledge, sophisticated artistic traditions, and most remarkably, a system of writing that represented humanity's first successful attempt to record and preserve knowledge, laws, and historical narratives for future generations. The discovery of cuneiform tablets within these royal tombs and throughout the surrounding city provided archaeologists with direct access to the voices of the Sumerian kings themselves, their scribes, and their subjects, offering unprecedented insights into the political structures, religious beliefs, economic systems, and daily life of a civilization that flourished more than 4,000 years before the birth of Christ, establishing many of the fundamental institutions and cultural practices that would later be adopted and adapted by subsequent civilizations throughout the ancient Near East and beyond. Among the most significant discoveries were copies of the Sumerian king list, a remarkable historical document that purported to record the names, reigns, and accomplishments of every ruler who had held power in the various Sumerian city-states from the beginning of recorded history, providing modern scholars with an invaluable roadmap for understanding the complex political landscape of ancient Mesopotamia and the evolution of kingship as a social and religious institution. The king list's matter-of-fact enumeration of rulers whose reigns were measured not in years or decades but in centuries and millennia, combined with its casual references to divine intervention in human affairs and the regular communication between earthly monarchs and celestial deities, offered compelling evidence that the Sumerians viewed their political system as an integral component of a cosmic order that encompassed both the mortal and divine realms, with their kings serving as intermediaries between the human community and the pantheon of gods who were believed to control every aspect of natural and social existence. The emergence of Sumerian kingship from the prehistoric communities that first settled the alluvial plains of southern Mesopotamia during the 6th millennium BC represents one of the most remarkable transformations in human social organization, as small agricultural villages gradually evolved into sophisticated urban centers capable of supporting populations numbering in the tens of thousands, developing complex systems of irrigation that allowed them to harness the unpredictable flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers for agricultural production on an unprecedented scale. Archaeological evidence from sites such as Eridu, widely regarded by the Sumerians themselves as the first city ever established by the gods, reveals a gradual progression from simple mud brick structures serving purely residential and storage functions to increasingly elaborate architectural complexes that clearly served ceremonial and administrative purposes, suggesting the emergence of specialized religious and political elites whose authority derived from their claimed ability to communicate with the divine powers that controlled the flooding cycles essential for agricultural success. The excavation of successive building levels at Eridu has revealed a continuous sequence of temple construction and reconstruction spanning more than 2 millennia, with each new temple built directly atop its predecessor according to a consistent architectural plan that remained remarkably stable over time, suggesting the existence of a well-established religious tradition and possibly a hereditary priestly class responsible for maintaining the proper relationship between the human community and the gods who were believed to reside within the temple precincts. The evolution of these early temple complexes from simple single-room structures to elaborate multi-story ziggurats surrounded by courtyards, workshops, storage facilities, and residential quarters for priests and temple personnel demonstrates the increasing wealth and organizational capacity of Sumerian communities during the crucial period when political authority was gradually being concentrated in the hands of individual leaders who combined religious and secular functions in their persons. The archaeological record from this transitional period reveals clear evidence of increasing social stratification, as burial practices evolved from simple interments with minimal grave goods to elaborate tombs containing luxury items that must have required enormous expenditures of labor and resources to produce, indicating the emergence of a social elite with the power to command the services of skilled craftsmen and the agricultural surplus necessary to support non-productive specialists. The development of sophisticated irrigation systems during this period, requiring the coordinated labor of entire communities, and the maintenance of complex networks of canals, dikes, and reservoirs, created a practical necessity for centralized decision-making authority that may have provided one of the key driving forces behind the emergence of kingship as a permanent political institution rather than merely a temporary leadership role assumed during times of crisis or military conflict. The gradual concentration of agricultural surpluses in temple storehouses, documented through thousands of administrative tablets recording the receipt, storage, and distribution of grain, livestock, and other commodities, provided the economic foundation that enabled early Sumerian communities to support not only their religious and political elites, but also the armies of craftsmen, scribes, merchants, and soldiers whose specialized skills were essential for the functioning of increasingly complex urban societies. As these early city-states grew in size and prosperity, competition for control over water rights, agricultural land, and trade routes inevitably led to conflicts that required military leadership and the ability to organize and equip armies capable of defending community interests against external threats, creating additional pressures that favored the concentration of political authority in the hands of individuals capable of making rapid decisions and commanding the loyalty of warriors whose lives depended on effective leadership in battle. The institution of Sumerian kingship achieved its mature form during the early dynastic period, roughly 2900 to 2334 BCE, when archaeological evidence and textual sources reveal the existence of numerous independent city-states, each governed by a ruler whose authority encompassed not only political and military functions but also religious responsibilities that connected him directly to the pantheon of gods believed to govern all aspects of natural and social existence. The Sumerian concept of kingship, as revealed through careful analysis of royal inscriptions, epic literature, and administrative documents, was fundamentally different from modern notions of political authority in that it was understood to be a divine institution established by the gods themselves for the purpose of maintaining order and justice in human society, with individual rulers serving as temporary stewards of power that ultimately belonged to the deities who were believed to be the true owners of the land, the cities, and their inhabitants. This theological understanding of royal authority meant that Sumerian kings were expected to demonstrate their legitimacy not merely through military success or political skill, but through their ability to maintain the favor of the gods, as evidenced by the prosperity of their cities, the success of their agricultural endeavors, the effectiveness of their irrigation systems, and their victories in warfare against enemies who were invariably portrayed as enemies of the gods as well as threats to human civilization. The royal titulature adopted by Sumerian monarchs reflects this complex relationship between divine authority and earthly power, as rulers typically identified themselves not as absolute sovereigns but as servants of particular deities, adopting titles such as Ensi, meaning governor or steward, and Lugal, meaning great man or king, while emphasizing their role as intermediaries responsible for implementing divine will in human affairs through the establishment and enforcement of laws, the organization of public works projects, the conduct of religious ceremonies, and the leadership of military campaigns against forces of chaos and disorder. The physical manifestation of royal authority in Sumerian cities took the form of elaborate palace complexes that served simultaneously as royal residences, administrative centers, military headquarters, and sites for the performance of religious ceremonies that reinforce the connection between earthly rulers and celestial deities, with these architectural monuments often rivaling the temples themselves in their scale, complexity, and decorative sophistication. Archaeological excavations at sites such as Mari, Kish, and Uar have revealed palace complexes containing hundreds of rooms organized around multiple courtyards, including specialized areas for the storage of administrative archives, the manufacture of luxury goods, the housing of royal guards and administrative personnel, and the conduct of diplomatic meetings with representatives of other city-states, demonstrating the enormous organizational complexity of Sumerian governmental systems and the vast resources that were required to support the royal court and its associated bureaucracy. The economic foundations of Sumerian kingship were based on a complex system of land tenure and agricultural production that combined direct royal ownership of extensive estates worked by dependent laborers with a system of taxation and tribute collection that enabled rulers to extract surplus wealth from the broader population, including independent farmers, craftsmen, and merchants whose economic activities were regulated and taxed by royal administrators responsible for maintaining detailed records of all financial transactions that might affect royal revenues. The wealth accumulated through these economic systems enabled Sumerian kings to undertake massive public works projects that served both practical and symbolic functions, including the construction and maintenance of irrigation networks that were essential for agricultural production, the building of defensive walls and fortifications that protected their cities from military attack, and the erection of monumental architecture, such as ziggurats and palaces that served as visible demonstrations of royal power and divine favor, while also providing employment for thousands of workers and craftsmen whose labor contributed to the economic prosperity of the city-state as a whole. The religious dimensions of Sumerian kingship were perhaps the most distinctive and important aspects of the institution, as rulers were understood to serve not merely as political leaders, but as high priests responsible for maintaining the proper relationship between their human subjects and the pantheon of deities who controlled every aspect of natural and social existence, from the flooding of the rivers that brought agricultural fertility to the outcome of military battles that determined the fate of entire civilizations. This sacred aspect of royal authority was manifested through elaborate ceremonial protocols that governed every aspect of royal behavior, from the clothing worn by kings during different types of public appearances to the specific rituals that had to be performed at particular times of the year to ensure continued divine favor and the prosperity of the city-state under royal protection. The most important of these religious ceremonies was the annual sacred marriage ritual, in which the king was required to undergo a symbolic union with the goddess Inanna, the deity of love and fertility, in a ceremony that was believed to ensure the agricultural productivity of the land and the continued prosperity of the people under royal rule, with this ritual requiring the king to assume the role of the shepherd god Dumuzi in a dramatic reenactment of the mythological marriage between these two deities that was understood to be essential for maintaining the cosmic order upon which human civilization depended. Archaeological evidence from temple complexes throughout Sumer reveals the existence of elaborate ceremonial equipment associated with these royal religious duties, including golden crowns, jeweled scepters, ceremonial weapons, and ritual vessels that were used exclusively in contexts where the king was acting in his capacity as high priest rather than as secular ruler, indicating the central importance of religious functions in defining and legitimizing royal authority throughout Sumerian civilization. The integration of political and religious authority in the person of the king also meant that royal succession was understood to require divine approval, with new rulers typically required to demonstrate their legitimacy through successful performance of religious ceremonies and favorable omens that were interpreted as evidence of divine selection, creating a system in which political stability depended not only on military strength and economic prosperity but also on the perceived spiritual qualifications of individual rulers and their ability to maintain proper relationships with the gods who were believed to control the destiny of human communities. The extensive corpus of Sumerian religious literature, including hymns, prayers, and mythological narratives that feature kings as central characters, reveals the degree to which royal authority was embedded within a comprehensive theological framework that understood earthly politics as merely one aspect of a cosmic drama involving the ongoing struggle between forces of order and chaos, with Sumerian kings cast in the role of champions of civilization who were divinely appointed to defend human society against the constant threats posed by hostile natural forces, foreign enemies and supernatural beings who sought to destroy the delicate balance upon which agricultural prosperity and social stability depended. The preservation of this religious literature in cuneiform archives associated with royal palaces and major temples provides modern scholars with unprecedented insights into the mental world of Sumerian elites and their understanding of the relationship between divine will and political authority, revealing a sophisticated theological system that understood kingship as a sacred institution whose proper functioning was essential not only for the welfare of individual city-states but for the maintenance of cosmic order itself, with the failure of kings to fulfill their religious duties potentially resulting in divine punishment that could manifest itself through natural disasters, military defeats, or social upheaval that threatened the very foundations of civilized existence. The military aspects of Sumerian kingship were closely integrated with both the political and religious dimensions of royal authority, as kings were expected to serve not only as supreme commanders of their city-states' armed forces, but also as divinely appointed champions responsible for defending the cosmic order against forces of chaos and disorder that might manifest themselves through foreign invasion, internal rebellion, or natural disasters that threatened the agricultural foundation of Sumerian civilization. The archaeological record from the early dynastic period reveals clear evidence of increasingly sophisticated military technology and organization, including the development of bronze weapons and armor, the use of wheeled vehicles for transportation of troops and supplies, and the construction of massive defensive fortifications around major cities that required enormous investments of labor and resources while demonstrating the central importance of military preparedness in Sumerian political culture. The famous standard of Uar, discovered by Woolley in the Royal Cemetery and now housed in the British Museum, provides a remarkable visual representation of Sumerian military organization through its detailed depiction of royal armies equipped with copper helmets, leather cloaks, and bronze-tipped spears, marching in disciplined formations while leading captured enemies and booty taken in successful military campaigns, illustrating the degree to which military success was understood to be both a practical necessity for political survival and a religious obligation that demonstrated the king's worthiness to serve as divine representative on earth. The conduct of warfare in ancient Sumer was governed by complex religious and ceremonial protocols that required kings to seek divine approval through consultation of omens and performance of appropriate rituals before undertaking military campaigns, with the outcomes of battles understood to reflect not merely the relative military capabilities of opposing forces, but the degree to which competing rulers enjoyed the favor of their respective patron deities and fulfilled their religious obligations as protectors of civilized order. The integration of military and religious functions in Sumerian kingship is further demonstrated by the extensive use of military metaphors in royal titulature and ceremonial texts, with kings routinely describing themselves as divine warriors appointed by the gods to defend their cities against enemies who were portrayed not merely as political opponents but as agents of chaos who threatened the fundamental principles upon which human civilization was based, requiring their defeat and destruction as both a political and religious necessity. The economic dimensions of Sumerian warfare, including the capture of prisoners who could be enslaved and put to work on royal estates, the acquisition of tribute payments from defeated enemies, and the control of trade routes that generated revenue through customs duties and commercial taxes, provided practical incentives for military expansion that complemented the ideological framework that understood conquest as a divinely mandated activity essential for maintaining the proper relationship between human society and the cosmic order, creating a self-reinforcing system in which successful warfare generated the resources necessary to support larger armies, while military victories provided religious validation of royal authority and divine favor. The development of professional military forces during the early dynastic period, evidenced by the appearance of specialized weapons and defensive equipment in archaeological contexts, and the increasing emphasis on military themes in royal art and literature, reflects the growing importance of warfare in Sumerian political culture and the evolution of kingship from a primarily religious and administrative institution toward a more militarized form of government that emphasized the ruler's role as supreme military commander and defender of his people against external threats and internal disorder. The construction of massive city walls and fortified gates during this period, requiring the coordinated labor of thousands of workers over many years and representing one of the largest public works projects undertaken by Sumerian rulers, demonstrates both the practical importance of military defense and the symbolic significance of royal power as protector of civilized society, with these monumental fortifications serving as visible reminders of the king's ability to organize collective action for the common defense while also functioning as symbols of royal authority and divine protection that reinforced the legitimacy of existing political arrangements through their impressive scale and obvious defensive utility. The economic foundations of Sumerian kingship rested upon a complex system of land tenure, agricultural production, and commercial exchange that enabled rulers to accumulate the vast resources necessary to support their courts, maintain their armies, construct monumental architecture, and conduct the elaborate religious ceremonies that were essential for maintaining their legitimacy and divine favor, while also providing the surplus wealth that allowed Sumerian civilization to support large urban populations and the specialized craftsmen, scribes, and administrators whose skills were essential for the functioning of increasingly sophisticated political and religious institutions. The surviving administrative archives from Sumerian palaces and temples, comprising tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets that record every aspect of economic activity from the receipt and storage of agricultural products to the distribution of rations to workers and the payment of tribute to foreign allies, provide modern scholars with an extraordinarily detailed picture of how these ancient economies functioned and the central role played by royal authority in organizing and controlling economic production and distribution throughout Sumerian society. The agricultural foundation of Sumerian wealth was based on the intensive cultivation of barley, wheat, and other cereal crops using sophisticated irrigation systems that required constant maintenance and periodic reconstruction. With the labor for these essential public works projects organized and directed by royal administrators who were responsible for coordinating the efforts of thousands of workers, while ensuring that the irrigation networks continued to function effectively despite the constant threat of silting, flooding, and mechanical breakdown that could destroy years of work in a matter of days or weeks. The complexity of Sumerian irrigation agriculture is revealed through archaeological investigation of ancient field systems and canal networks, which demonstrate that Sumerian engineers possessed sophisticated knowledge of hydraulic engineering principles and were capable of constructing and maintaining irrigation works on a scale that would not be equaled anywhere in the world for many centuries, with some of the major canals extending for hundreds of kilometers and requiring the construction of complex systems of locks, dams, and reservoirs that enabled precise control over water flow and distribution across vast areas of agricultural land. The royal estates that formed the economic core of Sumerian kingdoms typically encompassed thousands of acres of irrigated farmland, worked by dependent laborers who received housing, food, and other necessities in exchange for their agricultural labor, with these estate workers organized into specialized teams responsible for different aspects of agricultural production, from plowing and planting to harvesting and processing, while also serving as a reserve labor force that could be mobilized for military service, construction projects, or other activities that required large numbers of workers under royal direction. The products of royal agricultural estates, including not only cereal crops but also vegetables, fruits, livestock, dairy products, and other foodstuffs, were stored in massive royal granaries and warehouses that served both as emergency reserves during times of shortage and as sources of rations for the thousands of people who depended on royal employment for their livelihood, including soldiers, craftsmen, scribes, priests, and administrators whose specialized skills were essential for maintaining the complex institutional structures that characterized mature Sumerian civilization. The commercial dimensions of Sumerian royal economies extended far beyond local agricultural production to encompass extensive trade networks that connected Mesopotamian city-states with distant regions throughout the ancient Near East and beyond, with Sumerian merchants traveling as far as the Indus Valley in search of precious stones, metals, and exotic goods that could not be produced locally, while Sumerian manufactured products, particularly textiles and metal goods, were exported throughout the known world in exchange for raw materials and luxury items that enhanced the wealth and prestige of Sumerian rulers. The regulation of commercial activity was a major responsibility of Sumerian royal governments, which established standardized systems of weights and measures, issued laws governing commercial transactions, provided security for merchant caravans, and collected taxes and customs duties that generated significant royal revenues while also ensuring that commercial activity contributed to the overall prosperity and stability of the city-state, with royal officials responsible for maintaining detailed records of all significant commercial transactions and ensuring that merchants fulfilled their obligations to the royal treasury and complied with established commercial regulations. The legal and administrative systems developed by Sumerian rulers represent some of the most sophisticated and influential governmental innovations in human history, establishing precedents for the organization of state bureaucracies, the codification of legal principles, and the systematic administration of justice that would profoundly influence the development of legal and political institutions throughout the ancient world and continue to shape governmental practices in modern times. The earliest known legal codes, including the Code of Uar-Nammu from the 3rd dynasty of Uar and the later Code of Hammurabi, which was heavily influenced by Sumerian legal traditions, represent systematic attempts to establish uniform standards of justice and provide predictable legal procedures that could be applied consistently across different cases and circumstances, replacing the arbitrary decisions of individual judges with codified legal principles that reflected the will of the gods as interpreted and implemented by their earthly representatives, the kings who served as supreme judges and ultimate authorities in all legal matters affecting their subjects. The development of professional legal and administrative systems in Sumerian city-states required the training of large numbers of scribes who were capable of reading and writing the complex cuneiform script that was used for maintaining official records, composing legal documents, and conducting correspondence with other governments and commercial partners, with these scribal schools serving not only as centers of literacy education but also as institutions for transmitting the cultural and religious traditions that provided the intellectual foundation for Sumerian civilization and the ideological justification for royal authority. The administrative apparatus developed by Sumerian rulers included sophisticated systems for record-keeping and information management that enabled royal governments to maintain detailed knowledge of economic conditions, military resources, and social developments throughout their territories, with specialized bureaucratic departments responsible for different aspects of governmental activity, including tax collection, military recruitment, judicial administration, public works management, and religious ceremony coordination, all operating under the ultimate authority of the king and his closest advisors who were responsible for making the major policy decisions that determined the direction of governmental activity. The integration of legal, administrative, and religious functions in Sumerian governmental systems is clearly demonstrated by the physical organization of palace complexes, which typically included not only royal residential quarters and administrative offices but also law courts, archives, temples, and ceremonial spaces where the king could perform the religious duties that were essential for maintaining his legitimacy and divine favor, creating architectural environments that physically embodied the comprehensive nature of royal authority and its integration of political, legal, religious, and economic functions within a unified governmental system. The influence of Sumerian legal and administrative innovations extended far beyond the boundaries of individual city-states through the widespread adoption of Sumerian governmental practices by neighboring civilizations and the preservation of Sumerian legal and administrative traditions in written form, enabling their transmission to later generations and their adaptation to different cultural and political contexts throughout the ancient Near East and beyond, with elements of Sumerian legal thought and administrative practice eventually influencing the development of Roman law and other legal systems that continue to shape modern governmental institutions and legal procedures. The sophistication of Sumerian administrative systems is perhaps best illustrated by the surviving archives of economic and administrative documents, which demonstrate that royal governments were capable of maintaining detailed records of complex economic transactions, tracking the movement of goods and personnel across vast territories, and coordinating the activities of thousands of officials and workers involved in various governmental functions, all while ensuring that accurate information flowed efficiently through the administrative hierarchy and that policy decisions made at the highest levels were effectively implemented throughout the governmental system. The development of standardized administrative procedures and record-keeping practices by Sumerian rulers created institutional frameworks that could survive changes in individual leadership and political circumstances, providing continuity and stability that enabled Sumerian civilization to maintain its sophisticated cultural and economic achievements over many centuries despite periodic military conflicts, natural disasters, and political upheavals that might otherwise have disrupted the complex social and economic relationships upon which urban civilization depended for its continued prosperity and cultural development. The cultural achievements of Sumerian rulers extended far beyond their political and military accomplishments to encompass revolutionary innovations in art, literature, architecture, and intellectual life that established many of the fundamental patterns and traditions that would characterize Near Eastern civilization for millennia to come, with royal patronage playing a crucial role in supporting the artists, writers, and scholars whose creative work produced some of the greatest masterpieces of ancient art and literature, while also advancing human knowledge in areas such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering that provided the intellectual foundation for subsequent scientific and technological developments throughout the ancient world. The monumental architecture commissioned by Sumerian kings, including the massive ziggurats that dominated the skylines of major cities and served as both religious centers and symbols of royal power, represents some of the most impressive engineering achievements of the ancient world, requiring not only enormous expenditures of labor and materials but also sophisticated knowledge of construction techniques, architectural principles, and decorative arts that enabled Sumerian builders to create structures of unprecedented scale and complexity that continued to inspire awe and admiration for thousands of years after their construction. The artistic traditions fostered by Sumerian royal courts, including sculpture, metalwork, jewelry, and textile production, achieved levels of technical sophistication and aesthetic refinement that would not be surpassed for many centuries, with royal workshops producing luxury goods that combined practical functionality with symbolic meaning and artistic beauty, serving both as demonstrations of royal wealth and divine favor and as expressions of the cultural values and religious beliefs that provided the intellectual framework for Sumerian civilization. The literary achievements of Sumerian culture, including epic narratives such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, religious hymns and prayers, wisdom literature, and historical chronicles, established many of the fundamental themes and narrative structures that would influence the development of literature throughout the ancient world, with these texts serving not only as entertainment and religious instruction, but also as vehicles for transmitting cultural values, historical knowledge, and political ideologies that reinforced the legitimacy of royal authority while also preserving the intellectual achievements of Sumerian civilization for future generations. The development of cuneiform writing by Sumerian scribes represents perhaps the most important intellectual achievement of ancient Mesopotamian civilization, providing humanity with its first effective system for recording and preserving knowledge, laws, commercial transactions, and literary works in permanent written form, thereby enabling the accumulation and transmission of information on a scale that had never before been possible and laying the foundation for all subsequent developments in education, law, administration, and scholarship that depend upon the ability to record and retrieve written information. The mathematical and astronomical knowledge developed by Sumerian scholars, including the sexagesimal number system that continues to be used for measuring time and angles, sophisticated methods for calculating areas and volumes, and accurate observations of celestial phenomena that enabled the development of calendrical systems and astronomical prediction, provided the intellectual tools that would be essential for subsequent advances in science and technology, while also demonstrating the remarkable intellectual capabilities of Sumerian scholars and their ability to develop abstract theoretical knowledge that transcended the immediate practical needs of daily life. The medical and engineering knowledge preserved in Sumerian texts reveals the existence of sophisticated understanding of human anatomy, disease treatment, architectural principles, and mechanical engineering that enabled Sumerian civilization to achieve remarkable practical accomplishments in areas such as surgery, pharmacology, construction, and hydraulic engineering, with this technical knowledge being transmitted through specialized professional traditions that ensured its preservation and continued development over many generations of practitioners who refined and expanded upon the achievements of their predecessors. The educational institutions established by Sumerian rulers, including schools for training scribes, priests, and administrators, created systematic methods for transmitting cultural knowledge and technical skills that ensured the continuity of Sumerian intellectual achievements while also providing the trained personnel necessary for maintaining the complex administrative, religious, and economic systems that characterized mature Sumerian civilization, with these educational traditions eventually being adopted and adapted by other civilizations throughout the ancient Near East and serving as models for educational institutions that continue to influence modern approaches to education and professional training. The decline and transformation of Sumerian kingship during the late 3rd millennium BCE resulted from a complex interaction of internal political developments, external military pressures, environmental challenges, and cultural changes that gradually undermined the institutional foundations of Sumerian civilization while also contributing to its ultimate absorption into the broader cultural and political framework of ancient Mesopotamian civilization, with the legacy of Sumerian political and cultural achievements continuing to influence subsequent developments in law, government, religion, and intellectual life throughout the ancient Near East and beyond. The rise of the Akkadian Empire under Sargon of Akkad around 2334 BCE marked the beginning of a new phase in Mesopotamian political development that saw the gradual displacement of Sumerian political independence and the integration of Sumerian city-states into larger imperial systems that were dominated by Semitic-speaking peoples who adopted and adapted many aspects of Sumerian culture while also introducing new political structures, military technologies, and cultural traditions that fundamentally altered the character of Mesopotamian civilization. The military campaigns conducted by Akkadian rulers against Sumerian city-states, documented in contemporary royal inscriptions and later historical chronicles, reveal the superior military organization and technology that enabled the Akkadians to overcome the traditional military advantages of Sumerian armies and establish political control over territories that had previously been governed by independent Sumerian kings, with the success of Akkadian conquest reflecting not only military superiority but also the political fragmentation and internal conflicts that had weakened Sumerian resistance to external domination during the preceding centuries. The environmental challenges that contributed to the decline of Sumerian civilization included increasing salinization of agricultural land resulting from intensive irrigation agriculture, climate change that reduced rainfall and river flow throughout the region, and the silting of irrigation canals that required constantly increasing investments of labor and resources for maintenance, creating economic pressures that strained the resources of Sumerian rulers and reduced their ability to maintain the military forces and administrative systems necessary for effective governance and defense against external threats. The cultural transformation of Sumerian civilization during this period involved not only political conquest but also linguistic change, as Akkadian gradually replaced Sumerian as the primary language of government, commerce, and literary expression throughout Mesopotamia. Although Sumerian continued to be used as a scholarly and religious language for many centuries and remained an important component of Mesopotamian intellectual culture long after it had ceased to be spoken as a native language by any significant population. The institutional legacy of Sumerian kingship continued to influence Mesopotamian political development through the adoption of Sumerian legal principles, administrative practices, religious ceremonies, and royal ideologies by the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian rulers who succeeded the original Sumerian kings, with many of the fundamental concepts and practices of Near Eastern monarchy deriving ultimately from Sumerian precedents that were preserved and transmitted through written traditions and institutional continuities that transcended changes in political control and ethnic identity. The archaeological evidence for the decline of Sumerian city-states includes the abandonment of major urban centers, the deterioration of irrigation systems, and the reduction in the quantity and quality of material culture produced during the final centuries of independent Sumerian political existence, indicating both the economic difficulties that afflicted Sumerian society during this period and the breakdown of the administrative and technological systems that had previously enabled Sumerian civilization to maintain its sophisticated urban culture and monumental architectural achievements. The preservation of Sumerian cultural achievements through their adoption and adaptation by successor civilizations ensured that the intellectual and artistic innovations of Sumerian rulers would continue to influence human development long after the disappearance of independent Sumerian political institutions, with Sumerian contributions to law, literature, religion, science, and technology providing essential foundations for subsequent cultural developments throughout the ancient world and continuing to shape human civilization through their ultimate incorporation into the cultural traditions of classical antiquity and their transmission to modern times through various historical channels and scholarly traditions. The rediscovery of Sumerian civilization by modern archaeologists and scholars has revealed the extraordinary scope and significance of Sumerian achievements, while also demonstrating the central importance of royal patronage and political organization in fostering the cultural and technological innovations that made Sumerian civilization one of the most influential and creative societies in human history, providing contemporary scholars with invaluable insights into the processes by which human societies develop complex political institutions, sophisticated cultural traditions, and advanced technological capabilities that enable them to transcend the limitations of purely local and tribal forms of social organization. The archaeological rediscovery and modern scholarly investigation of Sumerian kingship has revealed the extraordinary sophistication and historical significance of these ancient rulers, while also demonstrating the crucial role played by royal authority in establishing many of the fundamental institutions and cultural practices that continue to influence human civilization today, with ongoing excavations and research continuing to expand our understanding of Sumerian political organization, economic systems, religious beliefs, and cultural achievements through the careful analysis of material remains, textual evidence, and environmental data that provide increasingly detailed pictures of how Sumerian society functioned and evolved over the course of more than a millennium of independent political development. The systematic excavation of Sumerian sites, beginning with the pioneering work of archaeologists such as Leonard Woolley at Ur, Robert Coldway at Babylon, and Henri de Genouillac at Tel Loh, has gradually revealed the physical remains of palaces, temples, administrative buildings, residential quarters, and industrial facilities that enable modern scholars to reconstruct the spatial organization of Sumerian cities and understand how different social groups, economic activities, and political functions were integrated within urban environments that represented some of the earliest and most sophisticated examples of urban planning and architectural design in human history. The decipherment of cuneiform writing systems and the translation of thousands of Sumerian texts has provided unprecedented access to the thoughts, beliefs, and experiences of ancient Mesopotamian peoples, enabling scholars to study Sumerian religion, law, literature, and political ideology through primary sources that reveal the complex intellectual world of Sumerian elites and their understanding of the relationship between divine authority, royal power, and social order, while also providing detailed information about economic practices, administrative procedures, and daily life that supplements and enriches the archaeological record of material culture and physical remains. The application of modern scientific techniques to the study of Sumerian archaeological materials, including radiocarbon dating, DNA analysis, isotope studies, and advanced imaging technologies, has enabled researchers to obtain increasingly precise information about chronology, population movements, dietary practices, technological processes, and environmental conditions that provides the empirical foundation for more accurate and comprehensive interpretations of Sumerian historical development and cultural achievements, while also revealing connections and influences that were not apparent through traditional archaeological and textual analysis alone. The comparative study of Sumerian political institutions and cultural practices with those of other early civilizations, including ancient Egypt, the Indus Valley Civilization, ancient China, and Mesoamerican societies, has demonstrated both the unique characteristics of Sumerian kingship and the universal patterns and challenges involved in the development of complex political systems, urban societies, and sophisticated cultural traditions, providing valuable insights into the general processes of cultural evolution and political development, while also highlighting the specific historical circumstances and cultural factors that shaped the distinctive character of Sumerian civilization. The influence of Sumerian political and cultural innovations on subsequent historical development can be traced through their adoption and adaptation by later Mesopotamian civilizations, their transmission to neighboring regions through trade and conquest, and their eventual incorporation into the cultural traditions of classical antiquity that provided many of the intellectual and institutional foundations for Western civilization, demonstrating the remarkable historical significance and enduring legacy of the achievements of these ancient rulers who lived more than 4,000 years ago in the river valleys of southern Mesopotamia. The continuing relevance of Sumerian political and cultural achievements for understanding contemporary social and political challenges is evident in the parallels that can be drawn between ancient Mesopotamian experiences with environmental management, urban planning, legal codification, administrative organization, and international relations, and the similar challenges faced by modern societies attempting to develop effective governmental institutions, manage complex economies, and maintain social order in rapidly changing political and technological environments, providing historical perspectives that can inform contemporary policy discussions and decision-making processes. The ongoing work of archaeologists, historians, linguists, and other scholars studying Sumerian civilization continues to reveal new information and insights that expand our understanding of these remarkable ancient rulers and their achievements, while also raising new questions about the processes of cultural development, political evolution, and social change that require further investigation and analysis, ensuring that the study of Sumerian kingship will remain an active and productive area of scholarly research for many years to come as new archaeological discoveries, improved analytical techniques, and innovative theoretical approaches continue to enhance our ability to understand and appreciate the extraordinary accomplishments of humanity's first kings and the civilization they created and ruled in the dawn of recorded history. The enduring legacy of Sumerian kingship thus represents far more than merely an ancient historical curiosity, embodying instead the foundational principles and institutional innovations that established the basic framework for organized government, systematic law, and complex society that continues to influence human civilization today, demonstrating through their remarkable achievements in politics, religion, economics, culture, and technology that the creative potential of human societies can be fully realized only through the development of sophisticated institutional structures and the concentration of authority in leaders capable of organizing collective action on the unprecedented scale required for the creation and maintenance of urban civilization and its associated cultural achievements.